For most of her life, Tiffany Trump stood in rooms where history was being written. Yet, she rarely controlled the narrative. She was present at conventions, weddings, indictments, and rallies. But somehow, she remained the least defined member of a family built on dominance. While her siblings moved confidently through business towers and political power, Tiffany kept a careful distance. Now in her early 30s, she is no longer avoiding the conversation, and what she has finally acknowledged confirms what many people quietly suspected for years: the child raised outside the inner circle. Tiffany Ariana Trump was born in West Palm Beach at St. Mary's Medical Center, just weeks before her parents officially married. She was the only child of Donald Trump and Marla Maples, a relationship that had already drawn intense media attention long before Tiffany could understand what headlines meant. When her parents separated and later divorced, her life took a very different direction from that of her older half-siblings. Instead of being raised inside Trump Tower's orbit of executives and deal-making, she grew up primarily in California with her mother in a setting that felt removed from Manhattan's relentless ambition. While Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric were learning the language of contracts and development projects, Tiffany's childhood unfolded in a quieter, more domestic environment. Marla Maples was determined to protect her daughter from the turbulence that often surrounded Donald Trump's public life. California became a buffer. It was a place where Tiffany could attend school, build friendships, and experience something closer to normality. Even though her surname guaranteed attention, wherever she went, that distance was more than geographic. It shaped how she understood her place in the family. She saw her father during holidays, milestone celebrations, and high-profile events. But she was not present for the daily rhythms of business strategy and political maneuvering that defined her siblings' upbringing. They were shaped by immersion. Tiffany was shaped by observation. Watching from the outside can foster independence, but it can also create a quiet sense of being peripheral. At Viewpoint School in Calabasas, she was known as a student first and a Trump second. Yet, the name inevitably followed her. Teachers and classmates were aware of who she was, even if her daily life felt relatively ordinary. She graduated and later chose to attend the University of Pennsylvania, the same institution her father attended. There she studied sociology with a concentration in law and society, an academic path that suggested she was trying to understand systems rather than dominate them. After earning her degree, she enrolled at Georgetown University Law Center. While her father's presidency drew global attention, Tiffany completed her legal education without seeking a dramatic spotlight. She attended classes, prepared for exams, and graduated with her Juris Doctor degree in a period when her family name was arguably at its most polarizing. For years, commentators referred to her as the Forgotten Trump. She never publicly adopted that label, nor did she wage a campaign to dismantle it. What she now appears more willing to acknowledge is that her upbringing outside the family's operational core left a lasting imprint. She was not excluded from the family. She was simply raised in a different environment with different expectations and fewer built-in pathways to power. That difference shaped her sense of belonging. It taught her to navigate visibility carefully, to value credentials over proximity, and to understand that being adjacent to power is not the same as living inside it. Trying to be more than a surname. Before global politics reshaped her public identity, Tiffany Trump moved through young adulthood with a noticeable sense of experimentation. She understood early that carrying the Trump name guaranteed attention, but it did not automatically define who she wanted to be. Rather than immediately stepping into business or political influence, she tested different creative and professional directions, almost as if she were searching for a version of herself that existed independently from the family brand. She released a pop single titled Like a Bird, a decision that surprised many observers. It was not a massive commercial breakthrough, nor was it positioned as a polished industry launch. Instead, it felt exploratory. She later acknowledged that she was evaluating whether music might become something more serious. For someone born into wealth and scrutiny, even a small creative risk carried amplified consequences. The reaction was mixed, but the message behind it was clearer than critics realized. She was willing to step into spaces where her surname offered no guarantee of credibility. Around the same period, she interned at Vogue, immersing herself in fashion culture rather than corporate boardrooms. She attended New York Fashion Week and even modeled for a designer presentation. placing herself in creative circles that had little connection to real estate development or campaign messaging. These choices were not random brushes with glamour. They reflected a deliberate effort to explore industries that did not revolve around her father's empire. The common thread behind these moves was separation. She was not rebelling publicly. She was repositioning quietly. Then everything changed when her father launched his presidential campaign. The family name transformed from a business brand into a political force, and separation became nearly impossible. Tiffany appeared at the Republican National Convention and delivered a speech that portrayed her father as attentive and encouraging. The tone was personal, measured, and careful. She spoke as a daughter, not as a strategist. What stood out was what she did not do. She did not move into a policy advisory role. She did not become a daily fixture in campaign operations. While Ivanka Trump later stepped into the White House as a senior advisor, and her brothers became vocal defenders of political strategy, Tiffany returned to Georgetown and completed her legal education. She continued to campaign in subsequent elections, appearing at rallies and speaking publicly in support of her father. But her involvement remained symbolic rather than structural. She stood on stage, but she did not shape the machinery behind it. For years, commentators interpreted this as marginalization. They assumed she had been sidelined or overshadowed. What Tiffany's more recent reflections suggest is different. She was not fighting for proximity to the center of power because she never intended to build her identity there. She was focused on constructing credentials, a law degree, professional discipline, a path that could exist beyond campaign cycles. In a family where ambition often manifests loudly and visibly, her ambition was quieter. That quietness was mistaken for passivity. In reality, it was calculation. She was attempting to ensure that if the Trump name ever receded from headlines, she would still have something solid beneath her feet, a relationship that changed the narrative. Everything shifted during a summer trip to Greece. Away from campaign trails and courtroom lectures, Tiffany met Michael Boulos at a beach club gathering introduced through mutual friends in a setting that felt almost detached from the political intensity that followed her everywhere. He was not part of Washington nor Manhattan real estate culture. He came from a wealthy Lebanese-Nigerian family whose business empire stretched across Africa and the Middle East. Built around distribution, manufacturing, and large-scale commercial networks, his world operated quietly through boardrooms and international trade rather than television sound bites. Their backgrounds could not have been more different. Tiffany carried a name synonymous with American political division and media spectacle. Michael came from a family known for discretion, traditional values, and strong ties to business communities abroad. That contrast drew attention almost immediately. Once their relationship became public, skepticism followed. Some framed it as a glamorous summer romance that would fade with the season. Others speculated about influence, status, and what such a union might symbolize. As their engagement was announced, scrutiny intensified. Headlines dissected Michael's family history, financial standing, and political connections. Observers questioned how two powerful families with distinct public identities would merge without friction. What might have remained a private love story quickly became a subject of international curiosity. Their wedding at Mar-a-Lago embodied that tension. The event was designed to be grand, blending cultures and symbolism with carefully curated details that reflected both families. Yet, days before the ceremony, a hurricane threatened Florida's coastline. Staff were instructed to evacuate. Travel plans were disrupted. For a moment, the entire celebration seemed at risk of cancellation. The uncertainty surrounding the storm mirrored the uncertainty surrounding their union. High profile, highly scrutinized, and vulnerable to forces beyond their control. When the ceremony ultimately proceeded, it felt like more than just a wedding. It felt like a statement of resilience. After the marriage, political dimensions deepened. Michael's father, Masad Boulos, became increasingly visible in campaign-related outreach efforts. The Boulos family, long focused on business and philanthropy, suddenly found itself under American political scrutiny. International business ties were analyzed and family relationships were interpreted through a political lens. Relationship experts openly discussed the strain of uniting two billionaire families with strong cultural expectations. Conversations about image management, public loyalty, and cross-cultural adjustment surfaced in media commentary. Through it all, Tiffany rarely addressed speculation directly. She did not offer dramatic rebuttals or public defenses. Her silence was steady, almost deliberate. What she now seems more prepared to acknowledge is the weight of balancing multiple loyalties. She had to navigate devotion to her father, respect for her husband's heritage, and her own need for emotional stability. That balancing act, conducted under constant scrutiny, created a level of pressure few newlyweds experience. The relationship did not just change her personal life. It reshaped how the world viewed her. No longer simply the quieter Trump daughter, but bridged between two influential, very different worlds. Motherhood under national attention. When Tiffany Trump welcomed her son, Alexander Trump Boulos, the moment was intimate, life-altering, and deeply personal. Yet almost immediately, it unfolded in public. Her pregnancy was first revealed not through a carefully written personal statement, but during one of her father's political rallies, where he acknowledged the news while recognizing members of the Boulos family in the crowd. What might have been a quiet family announcement instead became part of a campaign atmosphere filled with applause and political messaging. It was another reminder that in our world, private milestones rarely remain private for long. The birth of her son marked a new chapter, but it did not remove the spotlight. As the months passed, Tiffany gradually shared small glimpses of her life as a new mother. The tone was restrained, never overly curated, never dramatic. She revealed enough to acknowledge the joy, but not enough to surrender full access. That balance appeared intentional. 9 months after giving birth, she attended the State of the Union address in Washington. She wore a structured cream suit with gold detailing, projecting composure and steadiness. She posted a simple caption referencing the event, avoiding commentary about politics or controversy. The choice felt deliberate. She was present, but she was not performing allegiance in the theatrical way many expected. She looked poised, aware of the cameras, yet not seeking them. At the time, the political climate was tense. Poll numbers were debated constantly. Economic concerns dominated public conversation. Approval ratings fluctuated. The administration's messaging emphasized strength and recovery, while critics pointed to divisions and dissatisfaction. Against that backdrop, Tiffany's appearance carried symbolism. Whether she intended it or not, she stood in the chamber not only as a daughter of the president, but as a new mother navigating a national stage. Motherhood seemed to alter her posture toward public life. For years, observers framed her as peripheral or overshadowed. Now she appeared anchored. Her identity was no longer measured against her siblings' business roles or political influence. It was defined by something far more personal. Being a mother shifted the lens through which she viewed scrutiny. Protecting her child meant redefining boundaries. In recent reflections, she has hinted at the complexity of balancing two influential family legacies while building a stable home life, navigating expectations from the Trump family, respecting the cultural roots of the Boulos family, and shielding her son from overwhelming attention required emotional discipline. The quiet distance that once characterized her presence no longer reads as absence. It reads as strategy. Under national attention, she did not retreat. She recalibrated. Motherhood did not remove her from the spotlight, but it reshaped how she occupies it. The admission that was never dramatic. At 31, what Tiffany Trump finally acknowledges is not explosive. It is quietly honest. She has carried the weight of comparison inside a family where visibility equals value. She has navigated a surname that opens doors but magnifies scrutiny. She has felt the tension between loyalty and independence, between symbolism and authenticity. The world interpreted her silence as weakness or exclusion. What she now suggests is that the silence was intentional. She chose to step back from internal power struggles. She chose education over executive influence. She chose marriage across cultures despite public doubt. She chose privacy even when cameras followed her milestones. In a dynasty defined by volume and dominance, her strength has been restraint. She was never the forgotten daughter. She was a daughter raised differently, navigating loyalty without losing herself.